diagnose illnesses from their emotional core. So, as I was saying, the feeling through the emotional layers to see what defensive behavior patterns. So however you feel emotionally, that's how you hold your body. Those, that creates different hormones. It creates different chemicals in your body, even the bacteria in your gut. So your whole system is changed with what emotional patterns that you run. Obviously, there can be larger karmic patterns and ancestral patterns. Those are all different layers.
Hello and welcome to the Spirit Box podcast, where we explore folklore, magic, the world of the spirits, and everything in between. In today's episode, we welcome Kate Shelley. Kate is a shamanic healer whose journey has been shaped by a deep ancestral work, spirit connections, and a profound understanding of emotional patterns in healing. Kate shares how her mentorship with Dr. Helen Ford led her to explore the emotional roots of illness and how these patterns influence our lives across generations. Our conversation touches on the power of walking and talking as a healing practice, the deeply personal nature of spirit communication, and the importance of finding one's own unique way in working with unseen forces. Kate also opens up about her experiences with neurodivergence, highlighting the intersection of creativity, spirituality, and different ways of thinking. We discuss the balance between science and spiritual growth, the impact of trauma on the nervous system, and how practices like meditation and somatic work can support healing. Finally, we reflect on the challenges and opportunities of living in the modern world, especially for younger generations navigating new paradigms. Right, let's get on with the show. Kate, you are very welcome for the second time as we try to record this again. The internet gods were not having it the last time, so thank you for very kindly agreeing to reschedule.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
No worries. So welcome back, and I suppose to get the show on the road, can you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what your area of expertise is?
Yeah, so my name is Kate. I was born in Birmingham, but I've been living in Southwest Ireland for 22 years now. And I have always had an interest in human development, reaching true potential, and working with the spirits and feeling through the emotional layers of your energetic field. Some might call aura, but anyway, your emotional layers. So from your outside defensive patterns all the way into your true nature, and then looking at the whole picture of how you get back again. So how you keep your true nature, what throws you off track, and how to get back on track. So that gives a kind of a comprehensive personality picture, and with an emphasis on your true self. From that, I got more into shamanic healing, and that really then opened up a world. Then I started to work with the spirits in a completely different way, feeling very much more in relationship and connected. Gave me a whole different way of looking at the world, even though I'd been working psychically, spiritually my whole life. Working shamanically completely changed the whole thing. And from that, now I'm working to integrate those healings in a more somatic, embodied way, in a nutshell.
Okay, cool. And is there any particular I guess practice type that you would identify with, or is this kind of something that's evolved? I think that excuse me, the last time we spoke, which our listeners weren't privy to. But you spoke about a mentorship relationship and what have you. Like, is there a particular kind of umbrella that your practice would sit under?
Yeah, not really. It's not called anything particular, which would be handy if there was, because I could just say a word and people would know exactly what I meant.
Yeah, sure.
But no, I started from when I was 19. I met this amazing woman called Dr. Helen Ford, and she came from a family of surgeons, so a very academic, rational background. But she was a medical doctor and was looking at, she was always very interested in why some people get better and some people that are, she's seen spontaneous remission. So she's seen people riddled with cancer, and when she opened them up on the surgery table, all gone. So as a doctor, as a surgeon, she was interested, because obviously she just wanted to know what could help, which is an amazing quality, because I think there is lots of evidence out there now for medical science and scientists, and I hope eventually the two will gel, and that other healings aren't dismissed. So she didn't dismiss the healings. She went and investigated that path, ended up leaving medical science and going completely in the holistic direction, learning how to diagnose illnesses from their emotional core. So, as I was saying, the feeling through the emotional layers to see what defensive behavior patterns. So, however you feel emotionally, that's how you hold your body. Those, that creates different hormones. It creates different chemicals in your body, even the bacteria in your gut. So your whole system is changed with what emotional patterns that you run. Um, Obviously, there can be larger karmic patterns, um, and um, ancestral patterns. Those are all different layers. But to keep it simple, anyway, so the emotional patterns that are the origin of physical conditions. So that can be a physical illness in your body, or it can be a physical life circumstance. Now, so that's what I learned. So the whole process for me takes 2 hours to feel through, to get a good picture of what somebody's defensive behavior patterns are, a good grounding in their true nature, and then looking that when they put their true nature out, what comes in from outside, because we we're fine if we were just left to our own devices. We would just happily be ourselves. But we're in a world where there's not very many people that are themselves, and people are jealous. People have um, all kinds of judgments and beliefs about how we should or shouldn't act, and so that can come in on us for different reasons. The different reasons are interesting too, because it's like what hooks you, because sometimes it's the hook of connection. You because obviously as a small child you need a connection with your parents in order to survive, so they're all survival strategies. um, so we might give up our true nature in order to get connection, for pure physical safety, um, because of jealous attack. There's lots of different reasons. So that whole unique interplay, the unique dynamics that we have going on, it's not a generalized reading. It's very specific, and when you manage to hit the nail on the head, you can see people's eyes light up, and you can see that there's a way forward. And sometimes in the reading, healings happen too, depending. Sometimes they go uh, way off, and yeah, an amazing healing happens, and sometimes it's pure information.
Oh,
But
fantastic.
yeah. Yeah.
And earlier there, thank you for that. So earlier, as you were describing the practice, you mentioned like an emotional pattern.
Yeah.
Could you explain that a bit?
Yeah. So there's lots of different ways to come at that. So we all have an intrinsic true nature. And what's important to state there always, I think, is that we're never trying to attain a true nature. We think that we need to, meditate on a hill for 10 years or do a course or I don't know, do whatever, wear sackcloth, I don't know, whatever it is you think you need to attain your true nature. You don't need any of that. You don't need anything from the outside. It's a state of being. And I think that's always really important to remind people, because we know it intrinsically, but we forget and are constantly searching outward. But our true nature doesn't need anything. So it's a state of being. So if we just let ourselves flow up and out, we would be in that constant state. And that's our natural state. Um, but not many of us spend time in the day in that state of just pure beingness, because we have beliefs about what our true nature is. So a lot of us carry shame about who we truly are. A lot of us feel that if we were ourselves, nobody would love us. Again, the connection thing, or back to physical safety, if that was an issue in your childhood or even in your parents' childhood passed down. You would believe that if you were yourself, you would bring, you would encourage physical harm. So for all of those reasons, so for safety and survival, we have our beliefs that are trying to keep us safe. So whenever we try and branch out and be ourselves, there would be a bit, the kind of the security guard in our head going, "Oh no, remember last time we did that? It didn't go well. Stop." And then instead of doing that, do this. And that then creates a pattern, because we're always trying to be ourselves. And so every time again, you try and be that part of yourself. Because some people can be very successful. So the successful part of themselves is big, but maybe the loving part isn't. Or, it can be, vice versa, whatever different ways, infinite different ways that people have. So it doesn't mean that our whole self is blocked. It can be just particular parts. Or it can even be like, even if your connection is good, it can be the response. If you get a good response, then that causes a reaction. So it's very particular to your own self. Anyway, so you try and put out your natural flow. You get to a certain part that's had trouble, and that part says, "No, don't do that. Inhibit yourself." And either defend or mask or do whatever strategy that it's hide, freeze, um, and you end up repeatedly doing that pattern every day. And then of course days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, months turn into years, and often it's not just years, it's decades of our life that we spend inhibiting those parts of ourselves. So it's not just emotional, it's body, it's physical. So if we're defending our heart, you get the hunched over um, posture, or maybe it's more like this, depending on what your emotional pattern is. And so it's not just physical stance, but it includes physical stance, which then of course includes your physical muscle patterns. Then you're holding a repeated tension pattern in your body. And if you had a particular trauma incident, like a car accident or um, a fall or an attack, you might tense in a certain way or try and shield in a certain way, and your body remembers that pattern too. And you can develop issues from remembered stress in your body that changes your neurological the way that your synapses fire. So it changes your brain, changes your muscle patterns, changes your hormones, changes the way you store fat. It changes everything, in your body, the emotional patterns that you hold. Now, it's really hard to change them in a physical level, but if you can feel back through the emotional layers and come back to a place of your true nature, back to a place of beingness, from there, in that energetic realm, there you can make changes. There you find support, there you find love, there you find an anchor, and you come out from that place. And then that changes the rest of the layers. It changes your physical body, the physical world, circumstances, opportunities. And then it's not an abstract concept anymore. You can see it working and spreading out through your life.
I'd say that's fascinating, and I imagine like hugely valuable to people.
Yeah, I
Excuse
found
me.
it valuable for myself.
Yeah, great.
I mean, still now, I went for a walk with my friend today, and there was just something on my mind, and she was laughing. She was saying, you tell people this. She says, I can't believe I'm saying your own words back to you. But by the end of the walk, I realized it obviously wasn't the issue that I was talking about. It never is. It's never the
Mhm.
it's never the issue that's on the surface. And just walking and talking, and walking is really good. That left, right, left, right, left, right is really good. That's kind of takes you back to a kind of gentle trance state. So we were
Mm.
walking and talking, and by the end of the walk, I'd found in my own self, oh yeah, it's not this issue that's on the surface. We'd kind of managed to spiral back to the issue that I'm working on currently, and I went, oh, that issue, oh fine, I know what that is, and I'm working on that. And I felt all the love coming towards me, and I felt all the support around, and then I knew that that issue is resolved. So it happens every day.
Mhm.
I'm working with that myself.
Fantastic. And
Yeah.
you mentioned before, pardon me, that you've been exploring shamanism as a
Hmm.
practice. It is the kind of the type of healing you've just described. Is it part of the your shamanic practice now, or is it evolved in any way from you've changed from kind of the recognizing the emotional patterns and the release of those patterns? Has your practice changed or evolved with kind of shamanism coming into your life?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I still do the feel through, and that's they would be the basis. That's how I kind of get to know somebody and see what direction they might, would be a benefit for them to go in. So that's always my baseline. And I discovered shamanism through doing the readings, because I got a cluster of clients, which normally happens, like you get clients that have similar issues all in a cluster. So there was a cluster of clients that had ancestral issues. Now I'm used to, at the time I was just used to dealing with, say, parents, and sometimes I can see through the parents, I can see what happened in their childhood, so the parents. Um, but I had a few clients where it began to stretch all the way back in time through their ancestry. And so at first, that was the first one I had, and I'd never heard of ancestral healing. Um, but from there, and having a few clients, then my interest was really piqued to explore ancestral healing. So I began to explore ancestral healing, and then from there, um, more into shamanism, because other spirits had started to come into the work doing readings, and instead of just the readings, energy was being pulled out, and I didn't know what I was doing. It was just happening. I was just guided. I started to get stronger information, directly from spirits. They would tell me exactly what to do or exactly what to say. And so there just began to be a collection of different guides and different healing methods. I didn't know what was going on. I was just going along with it. And then when I began to explore shamanism in a more thorough way, and getting some really good teachers, then I realized what had been happening. And I just think it's really interesting without knowing what's going on. You just do what humans and probably pre-humans have done for millennia. And you realize you're working from the same source. And then that gave me goose pimples. That really blew my mind, because you can have shamanic journeys that people have had for millennia, and they've had the same journey in the same way to the same places, and you've known nothing, and you can be taken to exactly the same place. So a white person born and brought up in Birmingham had no notion of any of this can tap into, because we have the same DNA, we have the same body, we have the same connections, we have the same ancestry. We can just tap straight into all of that. And there is an infinite world of amazing possibilities, information, spirits, worlds, time. It's just unreal. I would recommend anybody to find a good teacher and explore shamanism, because I think it's part of our birthright, part of our development as humans, and part of our connection with the earth, connection with our own healing. It's very empowering, and it's very simple. I just think that it's really turned my whole life around. Yeah, knowing those spirits, and now, instead of like, I always worked with spirits, and I always saw spirits from an early age. And although I was very close to some spirits, it felt like quite thin, or like now I feel like I'm part of a team. I feel that it's not just me as a human, that I'm part of a network. And I love that, because it takes out all of the ego. It makes me feel really warm and supported. Where I might falter, there's other beings to support and take over, and you always know that the person is looked after, the client or my friends or my family. That I know I can see people, like when my children were leaving home. I was checking in at first. Have you got have you got him? Have you got her? Are they okay? Yeah. And I knew that they were, and I could see them. Both my kids. I could see them surrounded, and that's really good for a mother. You can let them kind of go off and find their way a lot better if you know that they've got a whole team around them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's that solid support. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you mentioned you've been seeing spirits from a young age, and one of the questions I was going to ask you is, as you were kind of detailing what your experience was like, and how kind of your healings changed once you kind of went down that kind of shamanistic path. Are you experiencing, how are you experiencing spirit? Like, is that like a visual thing, or do you hear them, or is it a sense thing? What is it like?
Yeah. So not often. So when I was a kid, I would always see more elemental beings, fairies, but there would be points of light. But more often, it would be I could feel them with me. like as if you're in a room with a friend, you'd sense your friend there in an energetic way. And I would have conversations, and I'd feel very close. There would be, I got a sense of humor. I appreciate a sense of humor, but a lot of the spirits would have a sense of humor. And it was great that, I was never alone. I was just one of those kids on their own in the corner, just chatting away to herself in her own world, Billy Daydream. That's what I was called. And my dad still says I'm away with the fairies, and I was thinking, yeah, you don't know how true that is. So I did see sometimes in spirits in a visual way, but it was, for me, it's more emotional, and that's the way I work now. I get more of an embodied sense, and then once a reading starts flowing, then I get all the information, and I draw the energy, like I draw the aura as well, and that's always very interesting because you can see, it's not just the colors, it's the textures, it's how solid they are. And I do a drawing of a person in their everyday mix of behavior patterns and true nature, and then in their true nature. And for me, it's the difference and the similarities between the two. That's where the information lies. So yeah, so I feel it in my body. It's a knowing, yeah, and it's an inner visual. So I am very visual, but in my mind, not
Yeah.
so much out.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
No, I was just curious how people experience these things. I mean, I tend to hear things,
Mm-hmm.
hear or dream information, that kind of thing. Like, so I'm always interested in how people, how it happens to them. How they experience.
It's amazing. That's what I loved. The more shamanic courses that I've been on, and everybody's so particular, and everybody is so unbelievably different.
Mm-hmm.
That is really what fascinates me, is how different everybody is. And like that, I'm always asking people, how do you get your information, and how does it work with you? Because it's mind blowing, really, like the different skills and qualities people have. And that's why it's really important to not follow somebody else's way of doing things, because we all have our own really unique, finely tuned way of working that works in a particular way, and you have to work that particular way to make your thing happen. But I'm endlessly interested because everybody is so diverse, so diverse. Yeah, it was really interesting that we did one really amazing journey in a class, shamanic journey, and we journeyed. The intention was to journey to see what illness was. So it's quite a big concept, quite open. And I saw it was like a mycelium network, like a it looked like a clump, but inside it was all these fibers, but the fibers were ancestral and emotional, and karmic, and I could see all, it's like this complex strands. And I came out from that journey going, oh my God, I know what illness is. This is amazing. Wait till I tell the world. It's like this. And we shared, there was 50 people, and we shared, and everybody had an amazing concept of what illness was. But some people were they could see the energy lines in a person's body. Some people could see how things were to be taken away. There was like 50 very, very, very different ways of looking at illness. And I realized, yep, you might think your own way is amazing, but that's amazing because that's the way you work. There's infinite other ways that other people work, and that's right for them, because some people are more body workers, some people more energetic workers, some people more spiritual workers, and we're amazing people. If we could all be ourselves, if we could all be our true selves, the world would just be unreal. Yeah.
And you mentioned in our correspondence,
Mm-hmm.
the precursor to recording the show, about neurodivergence,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the effect of being neurodivergent and trying to fit into the world. Could you talk to that a bit?
Yeah. So obviously, seeing spirits from an early age, um, you don't feel so much part of. I looked around and I couldn't see anybody that was like me. Um, Obviously, there's lots of people like me. I found out later, but when I struggled at school. It wasn't very good with relationships, um, probably for a lot of different reasons, and just getting very excited all the time and getting completely obsessed with things like obsessed with mad notions, constantly um, creative, like quite eccentric. Um, but not really being able to figure people out very well. Um, and that's the good thing about having children, is that you produce these beings that then have very similar qualities, and then you realize that actually there's a there's a whole uh, kind of cluster of um, uh, a cluster of personality traits that your family has. So I have an uncle that has a really bad tick, and my dad also has, like, I call them the blinks. And then my daughter began to have certain ticks, and from getting from exploring what might help her, realizing actually that was a cluster of Tourette's, ADHD, OCD, um, autism spectrum, and then realizing that went through uh, my brother was similar, his children are similar, and so for me that was enough of a data set to realize, there's something going on here. And the more we've looked into neurodivergency, the more that we realize that that's very much in our family through certain lines. I couldn't read, like, so it goes with like dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, um, which myself, my brother, and my sister would have. So we would all have been, really intelligent and keen to learn at school, but I can't do simple sums still now, and I've had businesses, and I've had to add up. But I do things that support me. Um, Especially now that I know that I have those difficulties. Whereas at school, I just thought I was stupid. I couldn't spell, but I loved English. I love writing. I just now it's great with a computer because it auto corrects the spelling, so it's not so much of a problem now. But when I was at school, everything was a spelt wrong. Um, I couldn't. I still can't read clocks with hands, and I always kept that a secret because I was very ashamed that I couldn't. Because there's all these simple things that I couldn't do. Um, and it because I was always interested in neuroscience. I was only reading a book, and they were talking about people that couldn't tell the difference between the lefts and rights, which I can't. It's hard to give people directions. I have to click click each side. So it's really funny in the car. It's like this: go this way, go this way, go this way. um, so yeah, different. So they're saying there's people that have trouble with lefts and rights, that they can't read clocks, they can't do simple sums, and they had a whole list. And I was looking at this thinking, oh, well, that's me, that's me, that's me. It's a thing. So yeah, so that was kind of around the time that my daughter started to get her tics, and so then it's been a very slow process of um, realizing the extent of how that has affected life, um, because there's all these workarounds that I've done since I was a kid, to try and hide all those gaps to make me so that I don't look so stupid. Um, but now, and especially with my daughter, as she finds, I think younger generation now, there's a lot more information accessible, and she tells me a lot of things, and I've learned to go easier on myself, not to push myself into situations where I have to make small talk all the time. I just really like to work at depth, and you know, if I'd have just done my thing and always just worked at depth and not put my energy into small talk, my practice would have been a lot better a lot sooner. So it just shows you, it doesn't matter who you are, what your thing is, you just have to follow the way that you do things yourself, whether you're neurodivergent or not. And I love listening to the Blind Boy podcast, because he talks a lot about his neurodivergence and the scrapes that it gets him into. And they're all very similar to me, because I would be kind of in that eccentric artist category. But that's a nice category to be in, and there's some great scientists that were also in that category, and it was because of their neurodivergency that they spent hours just staring at a spot on the wall and realizing that this meant that they could go off.
Yeah, I think certainly a lot of our listeners would relate to that.
Absolutely, everybody.
I certainly do. Reminds me of I was like undiagnosed dyslexic for a year, and dyscalculia. In fact, I was doing a course on spotting dyslexia in young people for work.
Oh, really?
And it was like in the course that basically I realized, that explains all those things
exactly.
that I do. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Like, I guess, like you were saying, that whatever it was, 30, 40 years ago, it just wasn't really even considered. People weren't aware of it, at all.
No.
Yeah. A lot of pain
and
from that.
it's so funny. Yeah, it's so funny, because now once you kind of know the pattern, like you were saying, you learn to spot. And I mean, obviously, I'm a creative person. I'm around a lot of creative people. I live in a town that is full of artists and musicians, and you just go around the town. Yep. Most of the town is just made up of very neurodivergent people. And I was saying to my friend, I was saying, I don't know about this neurodivergence. I just think, everybody must be neurodivergent. I spot people everywhere. And she says, yeah, no, that's the people Kate. That's all. So it is true. I did have to leave the peninsula a few weeks ago, and I realized, the rest of the world is very different. Yeah.
And do you think there's a relationship between neurodivergent and experiencing spirit in the way you described?
I'm coming to believe so. And it's something that I'm currently, that's my interest, because from my own experience, I would say yes. And even this morning, I was listening to the telepathy tapes about non-verbal autistic children having very easily measured evidence of psychic communication. And my teacher, I would see that she was very much on the spectrum, but I would see that that aspect on the autism spectrum of being completely devoted to one idea or one mode or having one interest. For her, that makes her very much stick to what she really loves to do. And she won't do anything else. And that's all her teaching is about. So I don't know whether it's more that you incarnate that way so that it helps you direct your energy, or whether because a lot of neurodivergent people have sensitivities either to smell or to light or to touch, that sensitivity aids your spiritual sensitivity. And also there's different parts of your brain that would open up. There's lots of. So the answer is yes, but it's something I'm very interested in, and I'm currently exploring that myself, because I would think yes, but that's only a theory at the moment.
No, fair enough. I mean, excuse me. I think it's very hard to collate that, right? It's or to qualify that, but there may be an association there. I think it's I think if people think differently, they're perceiving the world in a different way.
Absolutely.
And maybe that's kind of perceiving the world in a much wider way. Who knows? Pardon me. Which brings me on to kind of your creative background. Now this is something I really do believe. Creativity is intertwined with gifts of some description, of like spiritual gifts of description. I don't know any magical practitioner who isn't creative. So
I know.
interested to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. No, when you say that, it just lights my heart up, just to know that there's just so many other people in the world, and there's going to be people listening to this. And that's why, podcasts like yours, they're just so important, because it lets people know that there is a world of other people just like them, because it does come in a collection of, although people are very different, but it does come in, kind of a wider cluster of, creativity, being able to see spirits thinking differently, behaving differently in the world. People that are like that, the other people like that. You automatically resonate with those people. And for me, it just lights me up knowing that, you've given that gift of connection to so many people from doing this podcast. And, for me, it's helped me. And I think that's if I'd had that when I was a kid, just to know that there's other people like me, it keeps you on your track. And it supports you to not give up, to go and explore the world when people say that, art isn't important, and, don't pursue it as a career. If it's in you and it needs to come out of you, like I can't stop creating. It's just, it's a drive. It's an impulse. And I'm sure there's a lot of listeners that it's the same. So carry on, everybody, because it's the creatives that bring the magic back to the world. And we're living in a time where it's dominated by rationale, and I love rationale. I love science. That's been my biggest struggle, is the kind of how to connect the spirit and the science. But there is a way, but you need those visionaries. It's visionaries that change the concept of the world. We're born in a time where it's very materialist, and I don't just mean that in a consumerist way. I mean that as in it's all about science and rationale. But there is scientific studies now that are bridging the gap between science and spirituality, where the reality of spirituality is coming into the physical world. And we need those creative people, we need those visionaries, we need everybody to do their bit, because it has to come from so many different angles. And it's going to be those creative visionaries that create the new world. And I think that's hugely important at the moment, because, obviously there is a lot of people on the other side trying to create a very different world, and it's going in a very dangerous direction. I don't want to be part of holding that up. I want to be part of the spiritual community, the creative community, where we're coming at things a different way, to know that there's people that are keeping the vision, that are keeping the light, that is bringing in a new understanding. And I think that as we work more that way, as we support each other more, as we join together in that network, we will bring, we'll become more of a post-materialist society, and the balance will tip. And once, say for me, working with shamanism, my balance tipped from feeling that support from spirit. Once you feel it yourself personally, you have personal experience of feeling loved and supported, go into that place that where people have reported from near-death experiences, or when people have had really amazing trips, they talk about going to that place where we're all one and you're so loved, everything just exists in love. It's that place, going to that place, that changes your life. Having experience of that place changes your life. And then from knowing that that love is there, knowing that you're connected and you're all one, which sounds like a really trite concept, but it's different to a concept when you have your personal experience of it. It is life changing, and then from there, you develop a different relationship with the earth, a different relationship with your family, different relationship with your friends, with yourself, and that's where I think the healing will happen. But that's going to come from the creatives, and then the creatives will bridge with science, and then we're going to get a big change. So I think it's really important that we all do a bit and commit to our spiritual work, commit to our creative work, let ourselves dream, give ourselves time, because we're often, we're in a society where it's go, 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 go. That's often a trauma pattern, that you never let yourself rest or feel the feelings. In COVID, where everybody had to stay quiet for a while, there's lots of people that relished that and had time to develop, and there's a lot of people that just could not stand that because of the silence. And in the silence, all those things that you're trying to be putting off for years all started to come in, and that freaks some people out, understandably, but it only lasts a short time. Let those things come in, let them settle. Like on my walk today, the problem had to work its way from outside to inside, and as it gets to the depth of the inside, meets true nature, you go into the beingness, and it all resolves and comes out. So you have to take the journey, and it's not as scary as you think.
Right.
In my experience, you find more support than fear as you go in.
Okay. Let's pull the thread on that a bit, because you in our correspondence, you mentioned that whole idea of the hypervigilance as a trauma response, and that we have a culture, kind of, especially for some of our younger listeners, where it's talk about the hustle, the grind. How do you make lots of money, or whatever it might be, whatever it is.
We're all in it.
Yeah.
But there's not very many people I know that are not in it. Especially if you're a mother, or a parent, we wonder why we're up the walls, but we're trying to, we're trying to do right by the kids, which maybe wasn't the same in our parents' generation. There wasn't the same like push for perfection. Now we're so aware of the emotional impacts that we have as parents. We're like, oh my God, what are we doing? We're doing it all wrong. You have to do it all right. There's that stress, and then there's the stress of the job. And then on top of that, you might have elderly parents or family members. And then, you have to keep, you have to eat right yourself, and you have to, work out, and you have to make sure you have time for your hobbies. I mean, how many hours are there in the day? I mean, I was one of those people that, I had 2 kids. I was a single mom. I'm a single mom. I was running my own business. I was getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, going to the gym, coming home, cooking dinner, taking the kids to school, going to work. The dinner was then ready by the time they got home from work, coming back, doing my, make sure you meditate, make sure you do your yoga, make sure you do the homework with the kids, make sure you check in with your elderly relatives. I mean, like, it's bananas.
Yeah.
And I weeded out, like, I sold my business last year, and I thought, like, once I take the business out, I'll be just focusing on my spiritual business. So that'll be easier. I'll be doing my yoga naturally anyway. The kids left home, and there was a lot of those busy elements that were taken out. And I realized from taking them out, I still had the stress response. I thought that's quite interesting. So I sat with that and explored that, and realized that I didn't feel safe if I didn't have those stress responses. And that's a common trauma pattern, that the only way you feel safe is with hypervigilance. So you haven't got the incentive to give up the business, to give up the vigilance, to give up the feeling that there's something going to get you. So you might as well, just keep looking all the time, to keep scanning. And so coming again, like, spiraling back from the outside all the way to the inside, and realizing that actually lay with me. It wasn't an outside pressure. It wasn't an outside stress. It was an inside stress. And that inside stress didn't come from nowhere. I could take it back, further back again, and I could see where those stress responses came from, where they began. And then once you bring safety in the present moment, once you bring support, bring space, then that trauma response can begin to open up. Actually look around and assess the situation, and realize that we are safe now. There is space now. There is support now. From there, healing is possible. There's no healing possible in the stress response. And again, it goes back to patterns, and your brain. It's your brain is trying to be efficient. It doesn't want to assess safety again and again and again. If it's assessed it that it's unsafe, it's just going to keep it on the unsafe mode. It's never going to switch off the danger mode. You have to come back, you have to consciously come back and notice where you are now. And then I realized the practicality of meditation, about being in the moment. It doesn't just mean being in the moment. It means to truly assess what is in this moment, to truly assess how you feel, to truly assess if it's safe or if it's dangerous. Because I remember when I was a teenager, I hated meditation because I was thinking, that's stupid. Why would anybody close their eyes? You wouldn't know if anything was going to attack you. And I remember having that feeling so strong. And then now I realize, like, if I saw that person in a meditation, I'd just be like, oh, that's a trauma response. Let's work with that, bring it all the way back so that you can assess in this room, right here, right now, are you safe? And I don't just mean cognitively, I mean to assess that in your body. How does your body know if you're safe? What does a safe feeling feel like? Where does that safe feeling live in your body? And how do you know something is dangerous? What happens in your body then? And then you start to watch the relaxation patterns in your body, and then the activation patterns, or even the pre-activation patterns where you're just about to tense. And the more conscious you can get of that. I find my meditations a lot more practical and efficient now, because it has more of a grounding in that somatic trauma understanding. And, I say the same things as people have been saying about meditation for years, but to me, it makes more sense, more practical sense, because I can feel when my body is relaxed. I can see when my muscles tense. I can feel when my muscles tense. And I can bring it back to safety, and I can bring it back to tension. And again, I practice yoga nidra, working with those opposites: tension, relaxation, tension, relaxation. Your body finds a natural neutral. The tension patterns unfurl organically, and in that is a healing. And you don't even have to know what it was from, what your story was, what happened when you were 2. You don't need to go into any of that. You can just let your body heal itself. And knowing that, again, that we all have that capability. Our body is constantly going towards healing. Our body wants to heal, has the capacity to heal, has the knowledge itself of how to heal. So all of those things that I practice, I know that I love passing them on to people, because they're so empowering, because it's always in the hands and the bodies of the person who wants to heal, not in anybody else's hands, in your own hands.
And it seems related to kind of the other point that you sent to me about, like, your like looking after your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
Being very aware, or trying to become aware of what it's telling you, and kind of getting to the bottom of your what your body's trying to say to you. And
Absolutely. Because again, I see it as the more practical. It's still saying the same thing as meditation and mindfulness, but for me, it's just coming from a more practical angle,
Right.
and it has more information. Because I might notice that I'm stressed in a meditation, but so what? But in a somatic way, I can notice I'm tense, or with yoga nidra, I can notice I'm tense, and so you go to the opposite. You go to relax, and then it's really interesting to see how your body, when you go from one to the other, and you do that, you go from one to the other, and your body naturally shakes one off and settles into the other. And it just does that without you having to know all the background. You don't have to know any of the theory. Your body just knows it anyway. So having that awareness is, you can regulate your nervous system better in the future, which then helps you regulate the nervous systems of all the people that you're close to, or all the people in your environment. And it has a larger ripple effect, because again, it's not just about us. We're not just a single human being. We're a connected network. We're connected to our animals. We're connected to the humans that we're in the same environment. We're connected to our family, even if they're in different countries. I know my nervous system can affect my children's nervous system, even if they're in another country. I know my mum's nervous system affects me, even though she's in another country. And I try and regulate my own nervous system to balance that, and to help her heal too, even though she might not be cognitively aware of that at all. But, we're all such interconnected beings. Looking after your own nervous system is not only the responsible thing to do for yourself, but the responsible thing to do for everybody around you. It's great for codependent people because they are always trying to, fix the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's never the way to go. If you want to help the other person, you regulate your own nervous system, you process your own emotions, you take the responsibility right back to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to ripple out through the rest of the interconnected web. So, you don't even have to know about codependence. You just keep it yourself, keep your own responsibility, sort your own corner. What do they say? Water your own garden.
I really like that. I really think that'd be something of such value to teach young people. Like imagine kind of being able to garner some self-awareness as a teenager. Like I look back at myself as a teenager and go, would I have been able to do it? I don't know, but at least you have some tools in the tool bag. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I see it with my own children. My own children teach me a lot of things,
Right.
Because there's particular things of our generation that we found shameful or just weren't in our comprehension. That is, that they have an everyday language of.
Yeah.
And they just sometimes have a lot more ease. And I'm not saying it's any easier to be a teenager now. I think it's harder.
Yeah.
With the constant pressures of social media. I wouldn't have gotten on very well. I probably would have had a very mad YouTube channel. That's what my that's what my son always says. They're like, "Oh, thank God, there's no videos of you from when you were that age, that you were just doing mad." He's seen some of the home videos that that I used to make. He said you definitely would have had a YouTube channel. So I don't know. Maybe I would have gotten on with social media. I don't know. But I wouldn't have liked school to come home with me. That's for sure. Because
this is really
school, no
full
good.
on. Yeah.
No, so I don't envy the young people of today. I'm glad I knew a time, with say my grandparents, like there was still that connection to making things yourself and to cook from scratch. There was more, I feel like, my generation, so I was born in the 70s, we kind of have a foot in both camps. We have a foot in the modern day world, but we have a connection to like the last generation of people that, although it was obviously an industrial age, it was a lot more like grounded and real and authentic. So I think we're lucky in that way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I remember the first time I ever saw something on the internet.
Yep. Somebody explaining YouTube.
It was, it's funny when you think about it that way. Well,
it is.
Kate, it's been really, really fun chatting to you. If people want to find out more about you and your work, where's the best place for them to do so?
Yeah, on my website, lifemanualreadings.com. And I'm on Instagram, Life Manual Readings. There's no crazy YouTube channel. I do some crazy art now and again, but that's separate for now. Probably will be all up there eventually. But yeah, mostly it's my my healing work, Life Manual Readings.
And if people want to book a healing with you, can that be done remotely or is it all in person? How does that work?
Yeah, I work both on Zoom and in person. I work mostly on Zoom. And it's great having connections with people all over the world that I've never met. And yes, just different cultures have whole different. That's a whole other podcast of Different cultures, the things that come through from different countries. So yeah, it's very interesting being able to work remotely now and meet some amazing people all over the world.
Cool.
And also on my website there is a free mini ebook to work on your daily energy. So it's a good way to improve your intuitive ability, a good way to get to know yourself. There's a free yoga nidra for relaxation,
Oh, cool.
and a free shamanic drumming track. So if you did want to get into shamanism, I'd get some good guidance. But if you want a drumming track, it's there free too.
Fabulous. Well, Kate, thank you very much for coming on the Spirit Box. It's been brilliant talking to you.
Yeah, well, thanks. I've really enjoyed the conversation. It's lovely to meet you.
Thank you, and thank you for your patience. For those listening, we're due to record this last week, but yeah, the internet gods decided it wasn't to be. But it's great to finally catch up and get the recording done.
Yeah, thanks very much.
My pleasure.
Lovely.
I hope you all enjoyed that. If Kate's work resonates with you, then do check out the show notes below or links to her website where you can book readings or indeed give her Instagram a follow. Okay, that's it from me. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. I don't know why I said that. I'm too old to be using expressions like the flip side. Anyway, moving on. I'm Darren Mason, and you've been listening to Spirit Box. Take care. Talk soon. Bye.